apparently a cleaner came out and said, "What do you want? There's nobody here. It's all locked up, you know." So I think when I get back to York and to Britain, I'm going to have to do a show there as well, aren't I? My father, he started as a cleaner on the railways, and it was the wartime. It was the Second World War, so there was like lots of people sent off to fight abroad, and they set on these young guys and trained. Well, in no time they were training him up as a fireman, and then as what they called a passed fireman, which meant he was allowed to drive steam trains, and he was the youngest passed fireman in the whole of the north of England. And in fact, when they moved him, when they closed the Bridling Depot eventually, and they moved him, he'd be in his 20s then, and they moved him to York, and he went to take over an engine, and the driver said, "You're not getting on here, you're nothing but a kid." And the driver wouldn't release the engine to him, because he said he wasn't old enough to drive. And it so happened that the guard, who was actually quite a bit older than my father, had a real baby face. So he went to the guard and he got him to join in with him, and they put caps on and rolled the trousers up and skipped along the platform holding hands. "I know, we've come to take over your train." The driver got off in a big huff and stormed off with it, but they weren't all as obliging as that. There was some quite difficult ones. Reuben Witherspoon, he was a big guy, he was a massive guy. And we're going back to the days where a driver had their own engine, and we're very proud of that engine. They were the only person to use that engine. And he would have my father polishing and scrubbing and cleaning inside the cab all the brass and the glass valves and everything constantly. In fact, one time he didn't do a good enough job, and this big massive Reuben he'd be shouting at him and telling him what to do all the time. One time he didn't do a good enough job, and he hit him across the head and knocked my father flying across the cab. It could have done him really serious harm. And then my father gets his past fireman position, and now he's actually driving trains, so he has his own fireman who's working for him now. And the fireman got put onto the engine, and my father was on another train, and he hadn't got back in time, so they had to wait quite a while. And so when he got on to the cabin, the cab of the engine with this new fireman, the fireman said, "That other driver's really horrible, isn't he?" "Which other driver?" said. "A really big guy," he said. He described him, and it was clearly Reuben Witherspoon. And he said, "He was really horrible to me. He was shouting right in my ear and making me work harder at the polishing and the cleaning. I haven't even set off yet, and he was being really horrible to me." And my father thought, "Well, this isn't good enough, is it? I'm not having another driver coming onto my cab and telling my fireman what to do. This is my cab." For all he was, only in his 20s, and they're all a lot older than him. And so he went to the shed, the office in the shed, which is run by Mr. Bird, Mr. Richard Bird. They called him Mr. Bird to his face, but the rest of the time they just called him Dickie Bird. He went to him and he said, "I've come to complain about the way my fireman's been treated by this other driver." And he said, "Who was it?" Well, he said he described him, and he's been really horrible, and it clearly was Reuben Witherspoon. Dickie Bird said, "I was at his funeral last Thursday." And my father felt that he often had him on the carriage with him. If he had a fireman that wasn't working very hard, as they were going along, he said he would feel a terrible tension in the air, as if Reuben was still there and was still angry. Now, I say about my father being the youngest train driver, there was a lot of older ones. You kind of took 10 years in one job, and then you got to be fireman for 10 years, and then you got to be a trainee driver for 10 years, and then you got to be a driver, so they're nearly retired, some of them. But of course that was different with it being war, because there was less of them, In fact, when he got to be old enough to go away to war, he got his call-up papers, and he was told that he couldn't, that he was a reserve occupation and he was needed for the transportation of troops and tanks and all sorts of things here in Britain. And he found out afterwards that his father had gone and had a word with Dickie Bird and said, "Look, my eldest son is in a prisoner of war camp, Stalag 13, I think in Germany. He says, I don't want to lose two sons, he said. Put him down as reserve occupation. So my father never knew till after the war that it was because of his father that he didn't actually end up going away to war. But the drivers and firemen in the city of Leeds, which is only 30-40 miles away from York, they all got to retire early. Because one of the bombs during the Second World War hit in the middle of the night, so there's nobody in there, hit the records office. So they patched up a new building somewhere and thought we better start, all the records were destroyed. So they went to all Leeds' engine drivers and firemen and said, here's a form with all your details, fill in this form so we've got a record of you. And all the drivers and firemen got together and said, let's put ourselves down as 5 years older. And they all added 5 years to their age. And apparently there was a massive, a few years later, there was a massive shortage of drivers because they were going to retire. So my father might have been the youngest driver, but he might have wished he was one of the oldest ones. You know? Lied about his age, you know. But I'm going to tell stories about the railway and the funny thing that happened to my father. And then I'm going to go on to the second half of the presentation. It's going to be stories from my mother, who started ghost tours in York. And I'm going to be telling some of her spooky stories in the second half. But my father, it was his wish, I feel ever so proud that I'm here, that it was his wish to come to America. He wanted, and you know, he's passed away now a few years ago, but he wanted to travel across America on trains, and it was a wish of his. And a train that he drove came here, he didn't come with it, but I'd be 15, and we had a school's trip to the local museum, and they took us down into the cellars, which was the educational room, and they put on a cine film, a projector film. And I do remember that it was quite a disturbing experience, because to me, seemed like an elderly lady. She would put the projector on, and if you wanted to blow her nose, she kept a handkerchief in the top of her stockings. And she would put her foot up in the chair, and there was a shadow of her leg on the screen. And then she'd roll up the dress and get a tissue out, you know. Oh, it was terribly embarrassing. I'm just recovering from that. And then of the Flying Scotsman going by. And the driver looks out and waves at the camera, and I stood up and said, "That's my dad!" Oh, I felt so foolish. Everybody in the class looking at me, you know. You don't act out when you're a teenager, do you? And I'm shouting me up. And that was its trip before it came over to America. Apparently, one of the drivers that was on this, it was a millionaire, bought the Flying Scotsman engine, massive engine, and it was put on a crane, using the crane onto a ship and brought over to America. And it was a business thing, it was a private company that did it. And apparently it didn't do very well. One of the drivers was a friend of my father's, and he could write to him. And he didn't do very well, because in one of his letters he pointed out that the area that they'd gone to, there was no coal supplies. So they had a trade of no coal. And they didn't do very much business. And then, I'm not sure where in the world this was, but then eventually they got coal and paid an absolute fortune for it, set to wait for it being brought. And they set up to run a restaurant and bar, planning that all their profits would be made from the drinks. And just about everybody in the area where they based the train was taken a pledge to never drink alcohol. So they didn't do very well, really. But my father did drive the Flying Scotsman, and we went in the Railway Museum, the Railway Museum, it is in York, and I looked round with my father, and he said, "I worked every one of these engines, either as a fireman or a driver, and there's 50 or 60 engines in there. I worked every single one of them, except the Mallard. There was the one, the blue sloping Mallard. He was always very sorry that he'd never got to work that one. He said, but I've worked all the others. I said, I don't think you've driven the Japanese bullet train. Sure. I don't remember you ever going to Japan. I don't think you have. No. And then there's a reconstruction of Stephenson's rocket. I said, I don't think you've driven that either. You're not old enough, you know. It was the very first engine ever. So, and they reconstructed it. I was asked to do a guided tour of a town called Stockton. I got a message that in about 10 days' time, will you do a guided tour of the town of Stockton? We'll send you some information, and you can do a history tour of the town. and I've never been in Stockton in my life. and of course this is where the Stockton to Darlington Railway was, which was the first fee paying with the rocket, you know, the first public railway in the world, I believe, first service. And I got off the train, and then an hour later I was doing a guided tour of the town. And the very first guided tour I did, there was this group of elderly ladies, and you all seem to know each other. Are you together? And they said, yes, we're the tour guides from the town hall. Well, within 5 minutes, I was a bit kind of anxious, like, but within 5 minutes they were going, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I was quite pleased with myself, you know. And apparently, cities have a mayor, York has a Lord Mayor, because of a typo. And the Archbishop of Durham declared that Stockton would be a farm, which apparently meant like a town, like a region, and that it would be ruled by a major. And the secretary that wrote it down put a Y instead of a J. And that's why we have mayors. And apparently we have railways because the Stockton to Darlington Railway was built because there was an annual convention, a dinner of all sort of business people, and they all had a lot to drink. And this young man stood up after all the toast and he said, I would like to propose that Stockton has a canal. And they all went, And he went, or a railway. And they all went, oh yeah, yeah. And that's how we got the Stockton to Darlington Railway, apparently. But there's a lot of stories that come to mind about my father and his time as a fireman on the steam trains. And there's one character that always seems to come up. Now, it may be that there's a few drivers and that the stories are allocated to different drivers in reality, if you look at all. But in my mind, it's all turned into this one driver. There was this one particular driver, and he's such a character. I think he was amazing. His name was Marmaduke Wildman Pickering. And he was known as the Duke. And we're going back to the days when you had your own engines, and there's like a brass plaque on the engine, Marmaduke Wildman Pickering. Apparently, Wildman wasn't a nickname. Apparently, Wildman was his father's surname, and it'd been added in after because they weren't married. I never said that. Marmaduke Wildman Pickering. And he had his own engine. He had a big shock of long red hair and a massive red beard, and he was very fastidious in his habits. He changed his shirt on a regular basis. He changed his shirt every time the railway services issued him with a new one. He put it on, and he kept it on night and day until they brought him a new one. They issued new shirts on a regular basis, twice a year. My father said he would take it off in the cab and put it, and it would stand up on its own. Right, get the new shirt on, you know. But he was fussy in his other habits because he had my dad cleaning and polishing the cab all the time, and he wasn't getting the coal in the firebox. He was polishing and cleaning and making sure all the dials shone and the brasses looked wonderful and that sort of thing. Now, other firemen said to me, Dad, how, you know, he makes you work all the time, it doesn't seem fair. And he would go, no, it's not fair, it's awful. He never told any of the others. But at the end of your shift, you get to the depot, you get to the loco yards, you go into the loco yards, you've got an hour and a half cleaning time. He's already done all his cleaning. That's it. And the Duke lived over the wall from the loco. So they used to get in, and the Duke could say, right, climb over the wall with me, he says, and you can go on. And he said, and I'll climb back over the wall in an hour and a half's time and clock us both off. So the fact he cleaned and polished all the time he wasn't shoveling meant that he got off work an hour and a half before all the other drivers, all the other firemen. So, but he never told the other firemen this. He used to complain how hard he had to work all the time, you know. Now the Duke, I think at the time we're talking about, the Mallard got to do 100 miles an hour, but before that the record was 75, and the Duke was clocked at going down Enthorne Bank at that point at 104 miles an hour. And it beat the record of a specially designed train 10, 20 years later. But it was never official. But between the two of them, with my dad working so hard all the time, he did pretty well, you know. And the Duke kind of looked after him as well. They went over to Leeds, and there was this thing between the city of Leeds and the city of York where the drivers didn't get on. And they get there, and they've got quite a long time before the return journey. So my dad's got his pack up, his baked, his snap, his sandwiches, and it was always a bottle with a screw top, one of those that went inside the bottle, of cold tea, cold black tea with sugar in, they drank. And he had that, and he had his sandwiches, and he went to the canteen. Well, 5 minutes later, he comes back, he gets on the cab and starts opening his sandwiches, and the Duke says, what you come back for? He said, oh, they want any room. What do you mean you want any room? He said, well, there would be room, but nobody's moved up for me. Just wait there, don't you, with them sandwiches yet. Marmaduke Wildman Pickering, he got down off the cab. He went over into the canteen, and he just nodded at everybody. And he went over and he stood over the fire. If ever your engine was to break down out in the wilds, what you'd have to do is, there wasn't the communication systems there are now. You had little white detonators, like attached to a gun, but big, like explosives, basically. And you got these, and you walked 100 yards, and then you fastened one onto the line. You walked another 100 yards, you fastened one onto the line, another 100. Then if a train was to come at you while you're broken down, they would hear bang, 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 and know to jam the brakes on. The Duke goes into the canteen, he nods at them all, stands over the fire, drops one of the detonators into the fire, turned round, good evening all, and walked out. As he got back to the cab, there was an enormous bang! And he said, here, you'll need this rag to wipe your seat down, there'll be a seat for you now. He went in, and the whole canteen, he said, was black with soot. And he goes and he wiped out a corner of a table and a chair and put his hanky down over it like a tablecloth and got his sandwiches out. He said, and gradually, all these faces started appearing at the windows. They'd all been running out, you know. And he also helped me dad as well. For all he was quite a stern character, he would ask him to keep an eye on the signals, and he would describe, you know, the journey, and then say, tomorrow you're going to tell me the route signals for this route, and sure enough, Dad would repeat it. Then the next day he'd say, I want you to keep an eye on the speed, because you need to know what speed to go around the bends, what speed you need to get up to before you go up a steep bank, how much steam you need, and he gradually was teaching him how to drive a steam engine and how to drive that particular route into the railway station of Bridlington. And then eventually, Marmaduke Wildman Pickering must have thought, Ronnie Spendlow has got the hang of it now, he should be all right. And my dad's shoveling coal into the furnace, and he suddenly looks round and Marmaduke Wildman Pickering's missing. And he looked round, and he stood right at the back of the cab. The driver's dead, Mr. Spendlow, what are you going to do? And he just stood there, he wasn't dead. So my father had to drive the engine into, he said it could happen, I could just die like that, and you'd have to do it. And he drove the engine into the station of Bridlington, and he stopped perfectly. All the passengers got out, you know, it was all fine. And then the Duke says to him, you overshot by 1.5 foot. We'll get it right next time. And then there was 1947, when it was really, really bad snow, and my father went into the loco sheds, and they said there's no engines running, and it's so bad is the snow, particularly in the first valley. You like up a hill and drop down suddenly and back up again, and in there was actually the whole valley was to the top with snow. There's no way we can do it, so there are all the drivers are sitting around in the canteen, and he was a past fireman, so he was a driver, at this point, but they came to him and Marmaduke Wildman Pickering, and they said, we want you to get your engine fired up. Get in there and get the coal in and get the fire going. He said, and get the head of steam. He said, just a minute, you told us no trains were running, the snow is that bad. And he said, yeah, but we've got some inspectors come. And they want to go to the top of the hill and have a look at the valley, and they're going to assess how long they think it'll take for the snow to melt, so we can decide how many days it is before we can start running the service again. They walk out the loco. The Duke leans over to my dad as he goes, and he says, well, you're acting as fireman for me today instead of driver. I know. He says, we're going to have a good head of steam. He says, you get shoveling like there's never been any shoveling ever done before. He said, I want to see you working harder than any fireman's ever worked. And Dad looked at him and then he nodded. And they got in the cab, and the two inspectors got in their white coats with the clipboards, and they came and they stood in the cab behind them watching them like that. Yes, you can proceed. And my father's shoveling coal in, they're getting a good head of steam up, and they get where they're coming to this hill where you go and there's the snow at the other side of it, and they're going through quite thick snow, but it's like, you know, you're talking 3 times the depth of an engine in that valley. It's way up, you know, 3 times the height of this room maybe, and they get into the hill, and the inspector said, start releasing steam now, as we'll be stopping at the top of the hill. The Duke turns to me father, keep shoveling. He opened the valve up, the engine speeded up, it went up to the top of the hill, it went over the top, and it went down into the snow. It hit the snow, it pushed the snow out of the way. The snow, my father said it was very weird, because it was melting under the pressure, and then because of the pressure, it was immediately freezing again at the sides. And as they're hurtling in the darkness with just the glow of the fire, they're forming a tunnel through the snow. The ice was reforming and coming in the open sides of the cabin. They're going faster and faster and faster. The ice is getting closer and closer, and the 4 of them are all squashed in together. It went down to the bottom of the valley, it went up there, it came out the top into the fresh air, and Marmaduke turned and he said, your line's clear now. The one time I had to go to York when we were based at Ridley to get to stock up on coal. You know, they've not got enough in Brids, so they were running out, so we better stock up before we take the return journey. And they went. And basically, it's like there's a scoop, and it fills like a carriage, a truck off the railway, but on chains, and it lifts that up and it pours it down into a scoop, and that goes down into the tender on the back of the train and fills it with coal. And so they stood out of the way, letting these guys, the engineers, who do this to fill a tender for them. And he looks, and there's boulders of coal, sort of thing you'd have a job lifting, all lined up along the side. He went to me and said, what are them? He said, they're ones that are too big to go down the chute. The Duke goes to my father and he says, get them and get them in the cab. What? Get every one of them now. And my father had to get these boulders of coal. Like, you know, he had a job lifting one, and he carried it, and they put it in the cab, and he went back and he got another one, and he got like you could hardly move in the cab for these boulders of coal. And it was a massive firebox. It was a 9-foot deep firebox in that engine. And when he's got them all on, the Duke comes to me and says, get in there and start pushing them into the firebox. Get your 9-foot long hooked bar and push them right to the back and stack them up. So they stacked them all up at the back, and they get a fire going. And they've got a tender full of coal, and my dad's absolutely exhausted. And they set off, they get the steam going, they set off, they're going, and my dad goes to get a shovel to get some more coal to put in the firebox to keep the fire going. And the Duke says, what do you think you're doing? Don't bother with that, he says. Get your hook, get your 9-foot long pole with a hook on the end. And he went, he said, and get one of them boulders. And my dad reached into the firebox with a 9-foot long pole, hooked onto one of these massive boulders, pulled it forward onto the fire, and that would last half a day. Then, the other half of the day, he reached in with his hook and he pulled another boulder forward onto the fire. He didn't shovel any coal for nearly a fortnight. Marmaduke Wildman Pickering. I think this is my last railway story, then I'm going to be going on to those stories after that. And it's like Marmaduke Wildman Pickering and Ronnie Spencer. And there they are, they're running a goods train out of Ridley. And on the return journey, the signals change, and the stops out of the wilds, and it just feels everywhere, that's all. But it's a goods train, so they're not, you know, just closed compartment cars. There's no passenger cars at all, so there's only them. There's nobody in sight anywhere. And the signal's changed. He says there must be some problem in the Bridlington station, and they're not giving us a go ahead to go to get, you know, to clear it. Looks like, I think, says the Duke, I think we're going to be here ages. And they're sort of sat and they're looking about. They get a big shovel, massive long shovel, and he polishes and he cleans it up. And he gets 2 eggs. He puts a bit of lard, fat, into the shovel, shoves it into the fire, and pulls it out, the lard's melted. Get that bread and butter done. He does some bread and butter and he puts 2 eggs in the lard. The eggs are cooked. And they have a hot egg sandwich. An egg, I think he said, was 3 seconds. A roasted onion, which they seem to love to roast onions, was more like sort of 40 seconds or something like that, you know. And they're there, and they're looking out for a bit of a hot. There's a farmer over in the field, and he's wandering around, and you can see he's looking, and he's clearly looking and thinking, well, that's just a goods train, there's no people on it, so it doesn't matter what I do, there's nobody watching me. He went up to the hedge. He clearly had felt the need of a call of nature. And he went up to the hedge and he dropped his trousers. And he thinks there's nobody watching, but he's forgotten about the driver and the fireman. Marmaduke, wild man Pickering, got the big long shovel. Yes, the shovel they fried their eggs on. And he climbed down off the cab and he crept along between the engine and the hedge until he was right behind the farmer, and he slowly, quietly pushed the very long-handled shovel through the hedge and underneath the cart of the farmer, and caught everything that he was doing, if you see what I mean. And crept back out, and climbed up into the cart and put it in the firebox. Hopefully they got a new shovel next time they were hungry, I don't know. They're looking, and the farmer is like sort of, you know, well, I don't know if this is true, but my father says, if ever you need to go when you're out there in the wild, there is a habit that people start to walk away and then they turn around to go back and look at what they've done. There wasn't anything there. I'm sure I went there. And maybe I went over there. And they're watching, and this farmer's walking about the field like this. And at that, the signal changes, and they're starting to pull away. And they're both, they set the steam, and the engine's moving, but they're both hanging out the cab looking to see what'll happen next. And just as they got nearly out of sight, the farmer was going. Sorry about that one. And then my mother, yeah, she started ghost walks in York. And, well, I got a few things from my mother. She started the ghost tours in York, and now there are 8 or 9 different companies doing a ghost walk. You go to the Shambles at 7 o'clock, and there's somebody there, and you pay them £6 and you go on a walk with them. You could go to the Minster at 7:30, there's somebody there, and there's companies all over, leaving from pubs and all sorts, doing ghost walks, basically telling my mum's stories. And she started it all, like, way back then. And like I say, I've got a few things from her. She did ghost walks, and now I do ghost walks. She went to Spiritualist Church, and she took me with her to Spiritualist Church. And she was a bargain hunter. She liked, I was going to say charity shops, I think you call them goodwill shops, is that right? And there was charity shops, flea markets, second-hand shops, bring and buy, anything like that. She's always searching for a bargain. And when I was 15, she took me to the little Spiritualist Church. And it was a tiny church on Spen Lane. It had pews that only had room for 2 people, maybe 3 if an absolute squash, at either side, and a narrow, just aisle up the middle, and that was all. It's apartments now. It's very small. It's a very narrow building. It's just 2 small apartments, apparently. I wouldn't want to live there. I'm not saying it's full of frightening, horrible, scary, nasty ghosts. But if you just imagine a clairvoyant medium getting up on that stage, 3 or 4 nights a week for decades, bringing messages of love. Well done at passing your driving test. You need to eat more biscuits and gravy. Auntie Ethel sends a love, that sort of thing. I just think it might be a bit crowded. I don't think I feel there was enough room in there, really, you know. But we went, so I was just 15, and on that very first visit, my mother got a message. And there's a little old lady on the stage. She had a hairnet on, a big baggy cardigan, popped together plastic beads, and slippers, like house shoes. And she didn't live there. So she must have brought the slippers with her to make her look more homely. I think it just made her look more crazy, actually. She was trying her best, you know. And she's giving messages, and she came to my mother. I was a bit nervous over it. She said, I've got an old lady in spirit, and she wants to speak to you. And my mum said, okay, I'll take it. And she gave her a name, a full name, you know, first and second name. And my mum said, no, you've got the wrong person. I'm sorry, I've never heard that name in my life. It must be somebody else in the church. No, she insists the message is for you. And she says, I'll describe it. And she described this old lady in full detail. And my mum said, never seen anybody like that in my life. I'm sorry, it's not for me. You've got the wrong person. No, this little old lady insists that the message from beyond the grave is for you. And my mum says, okay, I'll take the message. What is it? The little old lady is saying, take off my dress and never wear it again. And my mum had this floral print dress that she'd got in a charity shop. She kind of did as she was told. And she got home, she never wore it again. In fact, she washed it, she ironed it, and the next day she took it to a charity shop. Somebody else has bought that dress, and they've got an angry old lady following them about now. But she told me lots of her stories, and then I've gone on to sort of come across quite a few of my own. But I think my favourite at all is the cathedral in York, York Minster, massive, beautiful cathedral. If you go behind there, there's a small stone-built house with small windows, and that is where you see the Black Death babe. She's seen tap, tap, tapping at the glass, as if she wants to get out of the house. Now, my mother met the couple who moved into that house and started renovating it. They moved in with the 2 children, and my mother met them. She also met the clairvoyant medium that they called in. She was quite a character. Now, say my mum started ghost walks in York. In a way, it's not quite true. Because a friend rang her up, and a bunch of her friends had got together and said, look, we've been talking about this, and we know you've done the research for a book, and you've interviewed people first-hand about their ghostly experiences for this book. Why don't you take us on a walk round York and tell us the stories where they happened? And that's how Ghost Walk started, and now thousands and thousands of people a year go on them. I mean, there's one here in Green Bay, they're all over the place, but way back there wasn't any in York, so I think she might have started them all over the world, really. But way back then, so she started taking people on walks. Well, I do tend to show off about this. And when I'm out doing an arts centre or a railroad museum or, I want to do some publicity. I'm on a festival in Norway or something, and I write my publicity. One of the things I put in that publicity is, son of York's first ghost walker. There's a lot of rivalry among ghost walkers. And one time, I got a phone call. I don't know whose son you are, but you're not mine. What are you talking about? Like, I started ghost walks in York, not your father. And I said, that's not what I'm saying. I said, it was actually my mother that started ghost walks. She said, I've been doing ghost walks in York since the mid-1980s. And I said, my mum started in 1972. He said, so did I. He's actually changed his publicity as this guy now, and it says the stamp is 1973 you put for some reason, so he's still wrong, but you know. And my mum met this couple, this clairvoyant medium, and this couple, they're renovating the house, and they're ripping out things that seem too modern, and replacing with things that more look like the period, as you would with an old house. It's when you start messing about with these old buildings that you start having problems. In York, there are more dead under our feet, that there are people walking about on the surface. The small wonder that spirits come seeping up from between the flagstones. And this house was getting disturbed. Now, I used to do a regular spot on, they call it Radio York, where it's like the Yorkshire radio station. And they booked me in to do a ghost story. And I did a ghost story every morning for 2 years. And then there was something in the rules changed, and I had to stop doing a regular one and just do occasional visits now and that sort of thing. But at that point I did a ghost story every morning at 10 to 6 on a morning. I'm very pleased to say I recorded them. And I never ran out of stories. I didn't go in the library looking up stories. I didn't go on the internet searching for stories. People were always coming up to me and telling me of their experiences. I'd be at a bus stop. And there'd be a bloke next to me, and he'd look at me and go, "You're that bloke off the radio, aren't you?" And how would he recognise me? I don't know. But he's like, "Yeah, I've got one for you." And they often, that deafen people, sorry. Frightened me, I know that. I know, I can hear voices. It's like one of them boxes in a haunted house, isn't it? Oh dear, that frightened me. That's the end of the ghost stories. Where was I? They were often like tradespeople, you know, plasterers, electricians and things. And there's one guy, he said, "I've been knocking the plaster off this old wall," he said, "and all of a sudden, a face came out of the wall," and he said, "it went right through me," he said. Over 600 stories I've heard like that. All different people's personal experiences. It's got to get you starting to wonder. Well, this couple, they were renovating their house, and they were knocking out things and this sort of thing. They would work all day, they would have the supper, get the children, take them up to bed, tell them a story, come back down. One would be sitting knitting, the other reading, then all of a sudden they would hear wailing and crying. The children are awake, we better go upstairs, and they go running up the stairs. And there's the 2 beds, and there's the 2 children fast asleep in the beds. It's really strange, it was crying, wasn't it? And 2 or 3 nights a week, they would hear this, I won't do it again. They heard them wailing and crying. And you're thinking, something must be wrong at school. They must be having nightmares or something. Can't understand it. Well, this went on for quite a while, and then on top of the wailing and crying, they also heard footsteps upstairs. They're definitely awake this time. We've got to go up, and we've got to go and have a look at what's the matter. So they go running up the stairs. The boy and the girl were awake. They were laid in the beds, holding the covers, looking out. "Will you make her go away?" "What are you talking about?" "That girl that comes in the bedroom, she wails and cries." "What girl?" "She sits on the edge of the bed and she's all grey and fuzzy." Oh, they thought something's got to be done about this. And they asked around, and they were recommended a clairvoyant medium. She was quite a character. She had big hair, and it was blue. And she had a long black dress, and a long black cloak, and a cigarette in a long cigarette holder, and quite a lot of lippy. And she floated into the house. She said, "Your problem, darlings, is upstairs." And she floated up the stairs, nobody told her. She went straight into the bedroom, and she communed with the spirit of the young girl who had been dead so long. She had been dead since they had boarded up the windows, nailed shut the door, and put up a sign, "Keep out Black Death." And sure enough, her family did have the plague. And one by one, they took ill and laid down, and she said they gradually seemed to disappear. But she didn't have the plague, and she tapped at the glass, and nobody would let her out. The clairvoyant medium said, "Your family are waiting for you. Look up to the light. If you rise up to the light, you will be safe at last." And the couple said they saw the girl rise up towards the light. And just as she was about to disappear, they heard her say, "Can I come back and visit sometime?" As it still can be seen. I'll tell you the worst thing about doing ghost tours. When you do a ghost tour, there's always somebody on my ghost tour who knows a better story than me. It's just not on, it isn't. You tell your story, I'm there out behind the minster, and I say, now we're going to go and visit the orphans or whatever, and we're walking along, and then somebody comes and walks alongside you and tells you their ghost experiences. Well, there's one lady who's always stuck in my mind. She lived in Fulford, the outskirts of York, and there were very big terrace houses, all in like one row, and this one had been converted into 2 apartments, and they have the upstairs. And she's like late. She's going to be finishing work late. And she manages to get to a phone, and we're going way back, communication was a bit different to this now, type of thing. And she gets on the phone and she catches her husband before he leaves work. And she said, look, we're supposed to be going out later, and I'm going to be quite late home. So could you get the evening meal ready, and I'll be in as soon as I can? She said, yeah, of course I'm going to have trouble. Well, she ended up not being quite as late home as she expected. So she got home, she opened the door, she went up the stairs. As she's going up the stairs, she heard voices. There was somebody in the apartment with her husband. She's getting near to the door. It's a woman. There's a woman talking with my husband. She got the door. She threw the door open and she looked in, and there's nobody there. She stood and she listened. She could hear voices there in the bedroom. She went to the bedroom door. She got hold of the door. She threw the door open. There was nobody there. I can still hear a woman talking to my husband. She listened, she wondered. They're in the bathroom. She went to the bathroom, she got hold of the door. She pushed the door open. There was a husband shaving at the mirror. Who are you talking to? I thought I was talking to you. He looked around, and in the corner was a young woman. She looked as real as me and you, and yet she had quite old-fashioned clothing. And she looked at them and she said, oh, I think maybe I'm in the wrong house. And she walked round the door, round the lady, through the lounge, to the door. They heard a clump all the way down the stairs, and they heard a big door swing open and bang shut behind her. And they kind of went, whoa, just a minute, and they went running after her. And they go chasing her down the stairs. They get to the door. The door is locked. Both bolts are across, and the chain is on. It took them quite a while to get it all undone, and they go, look out, there's no sign of anybody. And they go upstairs, and they flop down in a couple of chairs, and they looked at each other, and she said, she was as real as me and you. And he said, but, and then they both said together, she didn't have any feet. And she was completely real all the way down to the ankles, and then nothing, just disappeared. And yet they heard her clumping down the stairs. I think the Pearl of York, the Saint of York, might be well known. I'll maybe do a couple more to finish. But Margaret, the Saint of York, she was a martyr saint. And in the Shambles, which is medieval houses, very, very close together, and her husband had a butcher's shop there. And we're talking about when the Catholic faith was illegal. And she had converted to Catholicism, and she harboured Catholic priests. And she was reported for this terrible crime of being a Catholic and harbouring priests. And she was arrested, and she was taken to the prison on Ouse Bridge. And the building of the prison was actually on the bridge over the river. And she was taken there, she was held there until the court session in the Guildhall. And they walked her through to the Guildhall, and the judge asked her to plead innocent or guilty. And she refused. She said, I will be judged in the eyes of God alone. And she didn't want her family and her servants to be treated as badly as she had. The judge begged her to plead, because the crime of not pleading had a sentence of death. I will not plead, she said. You will be taken from this place. You will be returned to that place from whence you came. And there, in the depth of that prison upon the bridge, you will be laid upon the floor. A board will be placed upon you, and one by one, stones will be placed upon the board until such time as you can scarcely breathe. There you will lay for 3 days, until more stones will be placed, until you die. She stood up. She walked up the court. She took off her stockings and shoes and asked that they be given to her daughter so she may walk in her footsteps. And then she walked barefoot back to the prison. She went down into the dungeons. They laid her on the floor. They laid the board upon her. They laid stones one by one upon the board. She was very frail. She didn't last 3 days. She lived but 15 minutes. And friends came and cut off one of her hands, and it still can be seen, shriveled and mummified in the Bar Convent Museum. And I've always remembered the date of her death, the 25th of March, because it's the day after my birthday. And 25th of March, I've been out and I've been doing a ghost walk, and it was something like 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night, and I was walking home, and I walked home on the 25th of March over Ouse Bridge. And I'm halfway over the bridge, and all of a sudden, all the breath went out of my body. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move, I couldn't hardly speak, and I collapsed onto the wall. And I'm gasping for breath on the wall, and I heard this voice say, "Are you all right?" I went, "No, I'm not," and they weren't talking to me. As I'd been going that way, there'd been 3 women going the other way, and one of them was talking to the other, and the middle one of them said, "I don't know what happened." She said, "All the breath went out of my body. I can't move, I can't breathe, I can't hardly speak now. I'm laid on the bridge." And I said, "I'm just the same," and they just ignored me. They just left me there like that. And he said, "We'd better help you and find you somewhere to sit." And I said, "Will you help me as well?" And they just left me there. And they got hold of her and they walked like that. Well, I don't just do ghost stories and fighting stories. I also do stories of weddings. And I was at a medieval wedding in my medieval outfit, which is basically a dress and tights. And the wedding finished, and I got changed into my ordinary clothes, these. And it's 11 o'clock at night, and I'm going, and the bride said, "Oh, the wedding party's over now, we're all going for a drink, come with us. We'll go in the pub next door." And we went in this late night bar, and she said, "You do ghost stories, don't you? Tell us a ghost story." So I told her the story that I'm telling you. And there we are, we're on this bridge, I'm laid on the wall like that, and this couple have got of girls, of women, have got hold of this taller woman, and they said, "Come on, we'll take you somewhere warm to sit down," and I'm laid on the floor, and I went, I could do with somewhere to sit down as well, and they just ignored me and just left me there. And they said, "Come on, we'll go in a bar, we'll buy you a brandy," and I'm laid on the wall, and I said, "I quite like a brandy as well." They just left me there. Well, I'm laid there about 20 minutes. Eventually, I get my breath back, and I pull myself together, and I set off walking home, and I start thinking as I'm walking, either me and this woman had walked over the exact spot where Margaret Clitheroe had been crushed to death, or me and her had been lovers in a previous life. I like to think it's that one. And I told this story in this bar after this wedding, and the bride said, "That was me. I was that girl." And you know, the bridesmaid said, "Yeah, well, we were the friends that carried her." And I said, "You didn't get me a brandy, did you?" and the bride went quiet, and she said, "So," she said, "me and you must have been lovers in a previous life." Her new husband wasn't very pleased. I didn't get any more beer bought. Right. I finished with, when I was a teenager, I worked in Terry's chocolate factory. And it was a very responsible job. They brought the boiled sugar to make the toffee with, and there was brass rollers, and I had to sit there, and they put it on, and it rolled till it rounded, and then the rollers got thinner and thinner like that, until it went to the right size to be chopped into minced toffees, and there was a chopper and a wrapping machine here. Well, as it worked, by it got to the right thickness, it was still a bit too hot to go in the chopping machine, so there was a stretch of just flat board that it snaked along like that while it cooled. I had to sit next to that machine and keep a very close eye on it, because sometimes when the toffee snake was going like that, sometimes it would go, so it was going to go over the edge, and it was my job to lean forward and go. I sometimes have to do it 6 times a day, you know. Sometimes it went that way and I had to actually stand up and go like that and push it back on. Some days it didn't happen at all. It was just scary there, you know. But I was temporary because I'd got a job as a nurse, psychiatric nurse, and I couldn't start till I was 18, so they knew that I was temporary. So if there was any job shortages, anybody sick or anything, they would send me. Well, there was this guy, you'd be there, and be like this, and this guy would come up and chat to you. And when they were able to pick anything up from anywhere or anything, you'd see him in a doorway of the factory factory. Because smoking cigarettes, I mean, English, smoking away on a cigarette. And he never seemed to do any work. And then one day they said he was off sick, would I go and do his job? And I go into this massive factory with great big machines all the way around the room, making terrible noise and people working away. And in the middle is this metal shape, a big square, with metal bars across like that. And all the way around on the floor are blocks of butter this big, wrapped in greaseproof paper. And it was his job, he was the butter melter. So they said you have to do it in such a way that you're not getting your fingers on the butter. So I wrapped it very carefully, and I put one on, and then I put another, and then another, and then I had another line there, and another line, and I went on the other side, and I filled it all up. Then I got another block, and I'm stood and I'm waiting, watching for one melting. And one melted, so I put one in, and then I got another, and I stood and I watched. I found out afterwards that this bloke, the reason you saw him wondering about never doing anything was, he got in at 7:30 in the morning, he filled it with butter, he put another pile of blocks of butter on top of that, another pile, and another pile, and another pile, and it took till after lunch for it all to melt through. And then he did another 20 minutes work at 1 o'clock, that's all he ever did every day. Well, I don't know that, and I'm stood there, and I'm going like this, waiting for a gap, and I'm putting him in, and I slipped. I'm talking bars of red hot metal and melted butter. Luckily, I slipped backwards and I fell into the piles of blocks of butter. There was a hole in the pile of blocks of butter. My bum went in it, my knees went up to my chin and I was stuck. And I had a block of butter on top of me like that, my knees up by my chin, and I'm stuck there and I can't move, and I'm wriggling and I'm trying to get out and I can't get out. I'm there half an hour and I'm shouting, help, does somebody get me out? There's massive machines all the way around me, it's really noisy. Nobody can hear a word. Then eventually, I was about to say, this old man came up. I was 17 at the time, so he's probably about my age now, wasn't he? But to me, this very old man comes up, and I thank goodness you've come, I'm stuck, I'm trapped, I can't get out, you've got to get me out. And he walked right up, right close to me. And he turned and he went, oh no, come back! And he went round the whole factory and got everybody out of that 100 and they all came. Like that. And then they reached in the pockets and they had all chocolate waste. All chocolates that were faulty. And they brought pocketfuls just to throw at me. And they're there half an hour going, ha 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 ha! I ended up like that matter and I burst out of it like the Hulk and managed to escape. That's the day I was trapped in the butter.